Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Raul Avila. Avila was shot and killed Thursday, April 9th, 2009 in the 44200 block of Glen Raven Road in Lancaster, according to LA County coroner records. Candido Crespo was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. At about 7 a.m. on April 9th, 2009, defendant fatally shot Raul Avila Jr., then shot at Raul Avila Sr., who pursued defendant as he fled on foot. Both Raul and defendant had previously been romantically involved with Samantha Fierros, and defendant and Fierros had a son, Cici, who was approximately 1 year, 8 months old at the time of the shooting. Fierros had broken up with defendant in December 2008 and had rekindled a relationship with Raul in February 2009. Defendant found out Fierros was seeing Raul and fought with her about it. On April 4th, Fierros and Raul took Cici to the hospital because he had fallen and bumped his head. Defendant found out and met them there. Defendant tapped Raul on the shoulder and suggested they go for a walk. The two men went outside and did not return until Fierros was leaving the hospital with Cici. Defendant testified that he became angry at the hospital because he had learned that Cici had hit his head while playing with Raul. He asked Raul to step outside and they spoke about what had happened to Cici. Raul agreed to engage in a fight with defendant as long as Raul could choose the time and place. Defendant testified that on April 7th, he phoned Raul, who specified the time and place for the fight. Defendant went to the fight with co-defendant Ernesto Ruiz. Defendant didn't take a weapon to the fight, although he was concerned that Raul would do so. Raul arrived with two men. Raul and defendant punched each other in the face and wrestled on the ground. The fight ended when someone yelled gun. One of Raul's companions pulled out a gun and pointed it at defendant, who turned and ran. Defendant heard a gunshot as he ran. Defendant thought the fight was a draw, but he testified that he remained angry at Raul up through the day of the shooting for giving him a black eye. On the morning of April 9th, Miguel Ramirez was driving his son to school sometime between 7 and 7:15 a.m. when he had to stop briefly at the northeast corner of the intersection of Glen Raven and 3rd Street in Lancaster while a trash truck maneuvered. Ramirez saw a young man wearing a plaid jacket get out of the passenger side of a white car that was parked on 3rd Street near the northwest corner of the intersection. The young man was wearing a cap or a hood and his face was covered with something like a handkerchief. He straightened his right arm and began quickly running south on 3rd Street toward Glen Raven. Ramirez drove on and lost sight of the man, but about 10 seconds later, he heard at least 2 gunshots. Ramirez looked in his car's mirrors and saw the young man running south on 3rd Street. Ramirez also saw the young man turn and fire at another man who was also running south on 3rd Street. Raul's father testified that he was washing dishes in the kitchen of his home at the southwest corner of Glen Raven and 3rd Street when he heard Raul's car pull into the driveway and park. The window above the kitchen sink looked out into the driveway. Raul didn't live at the house, but he routinely drove one of his sisters to school, returned to the house to eat breakfast, and then drove his other sister to school on his way to work. Raul's father looked out the window and saw a man wearing a hood and some type of cloth over the lower part of his face walk up the driveway toward Raul's car. The man stood right by the back door of the car on the driver's side and shot Raul about 3 times. Raul's father banged on the window to try to stop the man from shooting. Raul's father ran outside and chased the gunman, who was running south on 3rd Street. The gunman turned around and fired at Raul's father, who hid behind a tree. The gunman continued running and Raul's father ran back to get his truck but could not locate the gunman again. Raul had 3 fatal gunshot wounds to his head. One entered at the left temple and went downward toward the right side. One entered at the top of the skull and ended up at the base of the skull. And one entered the back of the head on the left and exited on the right side. Deputy Medical Examiner Luis Peña explained that each of these 3 shots would have caused Raul's brain to stop functioning and ended all motor control, meaning he would have dropped where he was when the bullet struck his brain. There was stippling around the left temple entry wound, meaning that the gun had been fired from no more than 2 feet away. Raul also had been shot in the left hip area. Defendant was quickly identified as a suspect, and detectives Jonas Shipe and Angus Ferguson drove to Bakersfield to speak to him on the afternoon of April 9th. They recorded their interview with defendant, and the recording was played at trial. Defendant said that Ernesto Ruiz had driven him back to Bakersfield the night before, but he stayed at the home of a friend, not his parents' home. Defendant admitted that he and Raul had fought and explained they agreed to fight because of the situation with Raul and Fierros. The next day, detectives returned to defendant's home with a search warrant, and in his bedroom they found flannel shirts. Gunshot residue was found on the right cuff and forearm area of one of those flannel shirts. Detectives Shipe and Ferguson arrested defendant in this case in Bakersfield on April 23rd. Defendant conversed with detectives during the drive from Bakersfield to Lancaster. That conversation was recorded, and the recording was played at trial. Detectives told defendant that he was busted and that they had a tight case. Defendant Candido Crespo and Ernesto Ruiz were tried together by a single jury, but Ruiz accepted a plea offer during the presentation of defendant's case. The jury convicted defendant of first-degree murder, including a gun enhancement. It acquitted defendant of the attempted murder of Raul's father. The court sentenced defendant to a prison term of 50 years to life. Raul Garcia Avila Jr. was 19 years old at the time of death.